My name is Jessa Lux. I am the host of the Business Unusual interview series, and this exists to bring expertise and guidance to marketers, so many of you all, to help you do the absolute best work of your lives. And I'm also the community manager for a digital design agency called Click Studios. So we build websites, software, and apps for our clients. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we also have offices in Denver, which is where I am, and in Austin. And I am so excited about this conversation today, not only because it's about building community as brand strategy, but because it's with Beth McIntyre, who, as far as I'm concerned, is the absolute best in the business. And I cannot wait to learn from Beth. Beth is the head of community at CMX and Bevy. Beth, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and share your insight today.
I'm so excited to be here. Fun fact about me, my AirPod just died, so I'm just going to quickly change it out.
That is so funny because every time I get on one of these interviews, my AirPods, I wear them all day, every day, and then I'm doing an interview and they're like, it's impossible to keep them in my ears. So while you do that, Beth, I'm just going to lay the groundwork a little bit for this conversation. So it's a live interview, clearly, and it's 30 minutes. Beth and I will talk, and then we'll leave time at the end for your questions. And I know there are a lot of them. I kind of opened the can of worms yesterday. I emailed everyone who is registered, asked them what questions they have, and I got so many responses. So our conversation won't be able to hit all of them, but please, everyone, don't hesitate to put your questions in the Q&A feature. And because this is a live interview, please also just say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. Beth, you mentioned a couple of other ideas that can kind of break the ice in the chat.
Yeah, I love asking, okay, your day so far, explain it in 3 emojis in the chat. So this is like any emoji you have access to, and you're allowed to use it to explain your day. And then we kind of have to like decrypt what your day was like through your emoji symbols.
Okay, I absolutely love that. And while you are all deciding on your emojis, I'm going to put Beth on the spot. Beth, what are your emojis to describe your day so far?
Oh, okay. I think my first emoji would be the little cup of, here, I can actually put them in there. So the little cup of coffee, definitely. My second one is going to be a snowy mountain, because I'm actually based in Jasper, Alberta in Canada. And the sun is shining today and I can see all the mountains around me. So that's like a really nice part of my day. And then let's see if there's like headphones, because they are causing me a bit of strife this morning.
Totally. I love that. Okay. That is a great way to get started. Everyone else, put your emojis in there. And Beth, for anyone who's not familiar, will you tell us a little bit about CMX and your role there?
Totally. So CMX is the community for community professionals. It began about 7 or 8 years ago when David Spinks, the founder, got together with a couple of other community builders in New York, and they went for a beer, and they realized that around the table, all of these other people knew what problems they were facing and had advice and were sharing the same experiences. And so from that one afternoon beer with community professionals, CMX was born. It grew super organically. Our mission is to give community professionals everything they need in order to succeed. So we do that through our online community spaces. We do that through training and education. We have a huge, very robust events program that hosts lots of events every month. And of course, our blogs and frameworks and research, and really, there's just a lot that we do, and want to give back to community professionals so that they know exactly how to succeed in their roles.
And I, as a community professional, am so appreciative to you all at CMX. I was introduced to CMX through you at the CMX Connect conference, which is probably about a year ago now. And I'm so thankful because I've learned so much from all those resources that you just mentioned. I know that community is something, it's kind of like a point of confusion for people, especially as a business function. And I know that because sometimes when I describe my own role, I get some blank stares. So Beth, what is community?
That's so, I think that that's something all community professionals can for sure connect with, is because it's like, how many times have you been to a house party before COVID and you were meeting strangers and they said, what do you do? And then you just are like, don't worry about it. Cause like, you don't want to explain all of it. So the way that I kind of see community as a brand, especially now that it is kind of becoming more of a buzzword. So businesses are building out communities so that their customers' voice can be heard, can be the most powerful. I always think of community starting with, like, if I'm going to buy running shoes, I don't want to ask Nike. I don't need Nike to tell me which running shoes I should buy. I'm going to ask, my friend who runs marathons or runs every single day, has tried a whole bunch of different shoes. That's whose opinion I'm going to trust when I'm talking about running shoes. So then from there, I think of community as like, the company, Nike, is giving me and this marathon runner a space to have these organic conversations about running shoes. And so community is about building and investing in these spaces where users, customers, members of your community can have these conversations organically. So these spaces also come in all different shapes and sizes. There's online community places, there's forums, in-person events, virtual events, conferences. All of these can be kind of under that community umbrella, and they all have different purposes: sales and marketing and customer success. And those are kind of the three off the top of my head. But it's really about determining what the business goals are and then figuring out how community can drive the success for those goals. So community, as a definition, as a long-winded definition, is the space that the company is investing in to bring those people together.
I love that. And I wish I could just take you with me to dinner parties and house parties and be like, Beth, take it away. Because I think that was such a good summary. I think long-winded is kind of the only way to really describe what community is and can be. And when you were giving the running example, it actually reminded me of a tweet that David Spinks shared probably about a week ago. And he said, community is less about helping your audience and more about helping your audience help each other, which is exactly what you described with asking other runners about the shoes versus asking Nike directly.
Totally. And that goes into all of the different aspects. So, like, your business audience, a community business, is finding people to help each other. Same with customer success. So customer success, as you know it in a traditional sense, is your customers going to your website or calling you and you helping them. But a customer success community is you giving your customers the tools to help each other. Same with field marketing. Like, field marketing traditionally is I would send one employee to all these different places to host events for my customers or prospects or users. Field marketing as a community is people hosting those events for each other, customers getting together with each other. Totally, it's an absolute extension of your team. And I think community is really, what's the word, when exponential. It's what you get, this exponential growth that you wouldn't otherwise get as one or two people on a small team.
Totally. It can be such a powerful tool. And there are a lot, you kind of alluded to it, there are a lot of reasons that a company could decide to start a community. And I know that CMX has a model around this. So can you describe some of the compelling reasons and maybe give us an intro to what that model is like to help people maybe define and decide for themselves what a community could do for their business?
Totally. I'm glad you brought it up, Jessa. So CMX has the spaces model. A couple of years ago, the CMX team created this model. I would say it's like a framework as well, because an acronym, which we all love. And each different component of the acronym is a business value or a goal that your community could provide. So I think one of the most important parts and one of the biggest challenges of community is proving the value of what you're doing, because it's hard to measure the quantifiable impact of community, especially because a lot of the times community is about building relationships, solving problems, building connections, and those are more like qualitative. They're not really numbers based. So the Spaces model kind of aims to solve that challenge for you. And I'm gonna do it on my hand. So S starts with support. This is that example of like customer success communities, how your members are answering questions for each other and supporting each other with answers. And then you have P, which is product. And this is when community members are giving you product feedback and ideas and helping you basically improve your product or your software. A is acquisition. I would say acquisition might be the most slept on business goal to drive, because sometimes sales communities and acquisition communities can feel a bit like used car salesman, like a little bit sticky. But I think acquisition is like the biggest possibility for community. Anyway, it's how your community is helping you grow and acquire new members or users. C. I knew I would lose track. This is where you have a platform that your community members are contributing to. So this would be like a marketplace or a social network or developer relations programs. Like this is where your contribution comes from your members, and what your platform is, like Airbnb or Uber, like these are contributions from your members. And then engagement is E, and it's when your goal is retention. So customer retention, member retention. This is when we want to engage with people so they stick around longer and become more loyal, maybe to a product, maybe to a movement, maybe to the identity that your community gives them. But that engagement is just like bringing people in and holding them in, keeping them in. And then the second S is success. This is kind of goes hand in hand with support, but this is more helping people become successful. So while support is about like the technical side, how do I work this thing? Success is like the strategy behind it. How do you become the best you can be while using this product or tool? So I think with all of those things, and maybe we can email everybody after this with like the picture of it so they have a visual, but a community program absolutely aligns with more than one of these outcomes. I would say that the majority of programs definitely align with multiple, and the Spaces model is like the best way to either start a community program or go back. If you inherit a community and you're like, what is the purpose of this community? Go back to the Spaces model and really dive into which letter your community coincides with.
Okay, I love that. That does make it a lot more clear about where to start. So if your company doesn't have a community at this point, you're embarking on community, to use the Spaces model, you would kind of huddle up, say, what will this community be used for? What is the goal? And then identify one or two or whichever are applicable of the spaces and go from there. Is that right?
Exactly. And I think especially when you're starting a community from scratch, and we have a lot of resources about exactly that question, like how do you start from the very beginning? What's your first step? It's about listening. So it's about who are the users of your product, or who are the people who might already be in a community that you just aren't really investing in yet. I think it also comes down to talking cross-departmentally, if we will allow that to be a term. Like what does sales need? What does marketing need? What does customer success need? What does development and product need? How could you fit into these spaces? I would say first and foremost, though, is like, what is the company's biggest goal? What is the business goal that your company has? And then what is that outcome that you're trying to achieve, and how can community fit in with that? So if your company's biggest goal is sales and acquisition, that's the business strategy. Then from there, you can build out the community strategy. So which types of programs are you going to implement in order to meet this business outcome? And that's where you come with the programs themselves. Like, we need a forum, we need a distributed events program, we need online communities. This is where those kinds of things come into play. And then the third step is the tactical level. This is when you hire a community manager, or this is when you join the CMX community and start researching how to do this. But the tactical level is like everyday work. What goes into making these programs successful? If you have an online community and that's your community strategy, how do you keep it engaged? How do you welcome members in? How do you answer questions? How do you solve problems? So those are kinds of the three like strategy levels of where to begin.
Okay, that's great. And I wrote down two things while you were talking. One that I think is really important, and it can be a misconception, which is I think a lot of people assume that community lives within the marketing department. And you just clarified for us that community is a means of helping serve those higher level business strategies or goals. So it's not necessarily within the marketing department. Do you want to talk on that just briefly in terms of like where community should live? Is there one right place that it should live? Should it always be on its own? Or if marketing is the goal that community exists to serve, should it live within the marketing department, for example?
I mean, I'm biased. I think community should always be on its own. This is a conversation that we're having in the CMX community and the entire industry right now, is like the future of the chief community officer and how that's going to be the future soon, even now. So I do think that there's space for the chief community officer and like the community department on its own. But understanding that when you start with that first business outcome, if your business goal is sales, maybe the community sits under sales. If your community goal is acquisition, maybe it's marketing. If it's, customer success, maybe you sit under the customer success department. I think that when you start to see a community choosing more than one of those goals and actually reaching out to more of the business, that's when it sits on its own. So a great example is CMX. CMX was actually acquired by a company called Bevy. Bevy is a software company that builds a distributed events and virtual conference software for any company who's looking to have a conference and then build a community. So within Bevy, CMX is the community department. We help sales, we help marketing, we help product. Our distributed events community is hosted by volunteers who use our product, and we ask them for feedback all the time. So it really depends on the organization. I wish that we could all just be chief community officers and work in a community department, but understanding that it really does depend on the organization.
Totally. And it might be an evolution. Maybe you start working with marketing or sales, and then community grows and it can sit on its own. But I think that is an important distinction to help people get their head around community as a concept. The other thing I wrote down while you were talking, which is you specified that you have to start with that goal or that vision of what you're trying to achieve with community, and then choose the tools you're going to use, whether that be an event or a Slack community or Facebook group. I think sometimes people want to build a community and they just, start having events to meet people and help them, but there's not really like a clear North Star.
That's true, but I think that's okay in some ways. And the reason why is because when you're starting to build a community, the thing that a lot of people forget is that it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of love to build a community. You don't really launch a community because you have to have put that groundwork in to give people the reason to join. You're probably going to be manufacturing the conversations in the beginning and like personally inviting people to take part in them. So when you're in that space at the very beginning, I really would say like focus on controlling what you can control, and scaling comes later. So in the beginning, yeah, have an event, meet people, ask them what they're interested in, ask them, do you want more events? Would you rather have an online place? Like asking customers, asking your members who are already there and who are already invested in what you're doing, get them to weigh in. I think that's also a very slept on technique, is like ask the community what they want, because they'll tell you. And being totally transparent that you're going to try your best to give it to them. But anyway, so, you host that event. You now know what's gone into hosting an event. You know how hard it can be to get people involved. You know how to ask a speaker. You know what platform you're going to use. So from there, now you know all of the hard work that goes into it. So now you know how to automate that, how to scale it up. And I think that comes from all of them, especially in the beginning when we talk about online communities. A lot of communities you would talk to, a lot of community managers, they start because their community made a Facebook group on their own, or people were hosting events on their own, like just because they love the product or they love the thing so much. So then the company was like, well, we should be involved in these events. We should be giving them more resources so that they can meet and talk, and maybe we'll send them some swag. And then these people get really excited to receive t-shirts. So I think the community can be super organic and it will grow organically, but you have to put that work in the beginning to ask people what they want and to put in that manual work so it can scale later.
Totally. And one thing that's been fun for me with that is hearing what people have to say and then demonstrating that I heard them, because I actually make the change and I follow up and say like, so you mentioned last time this was a little rusty or didn't work perfectly for you. And that sort of communication and like demonstration of hearing my community members is just like builds such goodwill, and those people become like super community members. I know you have a better name. Is it a power member? Is that what the top tier of members?
Power member, super user, like there's advocate, there's all sorts of different, I call them my favorites. There's all sorts of different names. But you're right. And I think always the key is transparency. So when we talk about platforms, how do you choose a platform? Well, ask the people. I mean, are they on Facebook already? Maybe you should just take over the Facebook group. Will people like to move to another platform after Facebook? I don't know. Maybe ask them. And then I said earlier that like you don't launch a community. On the same note, I feel like you can't surprise your community. Like there should never be a big reveal in your community, because they should be with you every step of the deciding process, how things are going to happen. They should agree with you on the values and the mission and like, what are we here for? What is the purpose of this? I really feel like a community should be built with its members, not for its members.
I really, really, really love that. And I would like to keep the mic for this whole time, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to ask you a couple of just rapid fire questions, and then we can go to the Q&A. So anybody who's listening right now, please put your questions in the Q&A. Beth, one question I really wanted to ask you. I love learning from my own mistakes, but I also would prefer to learn from somebody else's mistakes. So what is a common mistake that you see in community building, especially when people are kind of like getting started with their community building?
I think the idea that it's going to be easy, the idea that you're going to launch this thing. And oftentimes it's not the community manager who makes the mistake. It's the executive who orders you to do this huge thing right off the bat. And that's just a mistake right away. I would also say the biggest mistake is thinking that you're going to get the right metrics right out of the gate. You're probably not. You're probably going to measure a whole bunch of different things about your community, new members, comments, retention, all of these different things you're going to start measuring until you find the perfect metric. And then I would also say, just like, you're allowed to be inspired by other communities and look at other communities and think, wow, this is amazing, but don't compare yourself to other communities, because every community is different. And I think that's what makes community so special, is that the one thing that someone can't copy from your business. They could probably copy your product. They could copy a lot of what you're doing, but your community is totally uncopyable. And so don't compare yourself to anyone else.
Just in general, don't compare yourself.
That's just good life advice.
Totally. It is so tempting, and it's such human nature to compare yourself. And I just had a conversation last week with one of my community members, and she's like, do you know the X, Y, and Z group? They have this really robust Slack group. And my response was, well, should we have a Slack group? She's like, no, that's not what you're doing. Like, you're facilitating more intimate relationships with people. And I needed that reminder. And that was just like, falling victim to comparing myself to this other community that is also great. Okay, looks like we just got a question from Amanda. She said, how do you best get other employees involved in your communities? I feel like community will fall on marketing in my company, but I'd love to understand how to best get others involved without taking up too much of their time.
That's a super good question, Amanda. And it's actually something that we're talking in our own community about right now. How do you get more people involved, and how do you get them more excited? Because, sometimes the work I'm doing is only exciting to me. Like, I just reorganized all our Slack channels and I'm like singing about it from the rooftops, and people are like, well done, Beth. I think starting is like with a low lift. So asking people to come in once a week, maybe on a Wednesday morning, and just peruse the conversations. What are people talking about? Answer one question a week, kind of thing. The other thing is, if you have rituals in your community, we have a welcome committee. Once a week on Mondays, they come in and they welcome all of the new members in the thread that we start. Maybe they take a shift on the moderation crew, like once a month, they are moderation or moderator for a week, where they're in charge of commenting and liking and responding to questions. So you can kind of have like a tiered approach of that. Again, starting with a super low lift, maybe it's only once a month they do this, the first of the month they come in. And then from there, you can work your way up. We actually do have like an engagement cycle framework at CMX too, that I can probably track down. And that engagement cycle could totally relate to how to get other employees involved. But I will say that part of the challenge of getting them involved, or part of the way to get them involved, is to get them excited. And that would be those reports. So a weekly report or a monthly report to tell people, like, look at how many questions we answered this month. Look at how many new members we got. These are the top posts we had. We had 9,000 likes in 1 month or something. So you're really showing them how much is going on, and almost make them get FOMO, like fear that they're missing out on something awesome.
I needed that advice. I really did. Like, I talk about it week over week, like, how can I get people excited without, like, with it being more like organic excitement. So thank you for asking that, Amanda. Thank you for answering that with such a good answer, Beth. We're getting really close to the end, but I still want to ask one more. So we might go 1 minute over. Drew, who is amazing and is starting a really cool company right now. Drew put a question in the Q&A that says, how do you create credibility and hype to get users to want to join an online community when you're starting from zero?
Ooh, okay. So that is a really good question. And I think that this is kind of where that groundwork comes from in the beginning, and like the manufacturing the conversations and the excitement. So not lying, manufacturing. When you are starting a community of any type, it's about personally inviting people and telling them why they specifically should join this place. Reaching out to people via email or LinkedIn or whatever method you'd like, but telling them, like, I see you work at X company and I see that you've done this much work on these projects. I really think you should come into this space. I would love to answer some questions. I would love for you to answer some questions of our members, or this is a topic we're all talking about right now. I would love for you to come in and join us. And doing that for 20 or 30 people. So then all of a sudden you have these, say, 20 people in this space who feel good that you asked them, you invited them into the space. They're talking about something they're interested in and they're an expert on. Then you start asking them, what are their challenges? So now you can start to kind of cross, like I said, manufacture those conversations. If member X needs help with this one, and this member just told you they're good at that, now you can connect them. So you are making those connections, which will then kind of build a relationship and grow. The ultimate goal is for those two people who had this awesome connection in your community, even when it was just 20 people, them to go out and invite a friend each. So now you have 40 people, and then it kind of grows exponentially from there. But again, in the beginning, it's focusing on the quality, not the quantity. We all have this grand idea of scaling, but you really need to focus on controlling what you can control in the very beginning. And that's those like awesome conversations with awesome people.
So good. I wish that we could talk all day, and I knew that I would wish that, but it is 11:32 my time, so I have to let you go. I have to let everyone who's here go back to the rest of their day. But Beth, this was like such a privilege for me. It was really a dream come true to talk to you and learn from you and now know you. So thank you again for sharing all this. I've gotten a number of questions about a recording. You will all get a recording, and you'll get that via email. I'll share other takeaways from this. But Beth, thank you again. And thank you everyone who tuned in for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I will say, I mean, of course, join the CMX community, but if you had any questions that didn't get answered, or you want to start a discussion with me, I'm on Twitter, which I normally never like promote, but that's a really easy, low lift way to like DM me or send a tweet to me or something, and we can start having these conversations there.
That's great. And just with regard to CMX, it's cmxhub.com, right?
Yeah, cmxhub.com/community. And then it's kind of a choose your own adventure, how you want to get involved.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Beth. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.